Buddha. The first question is, was Buddha a god? You know, we in the West have very little experience with the Buddha's story and the Buddha's teaching. So, the Buddha was not a god. The Buddha was a human being, like you and me. And when he was born, he wasn't born called the Buddha. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He was born into a very privileged tribe in northern India, now the region called Nepal. He had lots of wealth. It was a royal kind of family, and he had everything that he could ever want. There are many legends about the Buddha and his growing up. And it's said that his father, in order to keep the future Buddha home, would give him anything that he wanted. Anything. He wanted his son to take over. It's a very human story, isn't it? Maybe family business, something like this. So the father was caught up in his own desires for the son. But the son was questioning because all of these things in his life somehow weren't able to completely satisfy him. You ever have that feeling? The moment you get something, it starts to lose its taste. And so this bothered him. And so what ultimately he did was he left his palace and privilege and became a wandering ascetic practitioner. So in that time in India, there wasn't anything called Buddhism. Wasn't really anything called Hinduism too. But it was many different kinds of spiritual practice, all focused on a kind of mendicant, wandering, homeless life of the practitioner. And the Buddha went searching for this contentment. What is that about? How do I find that? And he studied with several teachers, you know. He studied with 5 teachers over the course of his initial period of practice. And at the time, he practiced great rigorous training and mortification rites. So he would starve himself. And these were kind of like the hard practices of that tradition at the time. Trying to deny the body, that the body was the source of pain and suffering. So he did that, and he was quite good at it. So good that he almost killed himself in the pursuit of enlightenment or whatever. He realized that he hadn't learned anything. And so he stopped doing that rigorous practice, and he went and decided that he would practice on his own and sit in meditation under what is called the Bodhi Tree. There's many Bodhi trees here, maybe, I don't know. They're all very beautiful. And that's what he did. And he was determined to sit in meditation and to watch his own mind and to understand the nature of suffering, of discontent. And that's what he did, over and over and over again. And he didn't deny his body. He would eat something here and there because he needed his body to do the practice. And ultimately, he came to the understanding that this suffering that people experience and the contentment, on the other hand, was all due to conditioned phenomena and clinging. And he rose from his enlightenment having attained some kind of understanding that is very, very deep and clear. Now, here's a human story. There are 2 stories in the scriptures where the Buddha goes to a person on the street, and he's so excited and moved by his experience. He says, friend, I'm enlightened. You want to try that? And this person says, oh, okay, nice to see you, my friend. Bye-bye. The second story involves the Buddha meeting up with his previous teachers, the 5. And here, the Buddha, I think, gained some wisdom from the last time. And he says, friends, I found something. I found that there is suffering. I have seen the cause of it. I know that there's cessation. And I know the way to freedom from suffering. Now, because he spoke into the human experience of suffering itself, now they wanted to listen. Now they could hear it. Isn't that true? When we all kind of share our suffering with one another, we can feel that oneness of the human tradition. Beyond Buddhism, beyond humanism, beyond Judaism, beyond Islam, beyond all those which are wonderful, there's the root human experience of suffering and its causes. So this is the teaching of the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, and this is the teaching that I found when I went to spiritual direction training that spoke so clearly to me. The first noble truth is there is suffering. It's not suffering is bad. It's not you should suffer to get wisdom. It's not any of that. It's not moralizing about suffering. It's just stating the case. There is suffering. And in Sanskrit, suffering is defined as dukkha. The word dukkha is used. Dukkha means, suffering is not so good a translation. Dukkha means a pervasive, unsatisfactory feeling in the human experience. So the Buddha found that there is a thing called dukkha, called unsatisfactory experience, that pervades the human mind. So he saw that exists. And if we look at history, as painful as it is, right? I mean, look at all the things that are happening right now. It's very unfortunate. I think, still? Like we're still doing this to each other? Like why? Have we not learned anything? But it's because, at least from the Buddha's point of view, there is this pervasive, unsatisfactory feeling that the human person, the human condition, clings to experiences to make it feel better. Just like all those things in the palace are temporary and conditioned when you cling to them. They don't last. There's not lasting contentment. There's not lasting happiness. So there is dukkha, there is suffering. The second noble truth is that the cause of suffering is clinging itself. That we cling to some idea of life, how it should be. And we strive and we strive and we strive, often manipulating ourselves and other people to try to make our vision come to life when the reality is not that way. Do you ever do that? Like work really hard to make other people buy into your way of doing things? When they can't, it's not their nature. It's not the correct situation for that to arise. In our minds, we can do anything. We can think up anything. So clinging to some kind of experience other than what is real is the cause of the suffering. The third noble truth is you don't have to live this way, folks. There's an end to it. You don't have to live like this. And the end of it is the fourth noble truth, which is called the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a way of living, a way of life. When I talk about the Eightfold Path with our students at the university, I say, on the Four Noble Truths, first, 4 things your parents never told you. On the Eightfold Path, I say 8 ways to get over yourself. Because that's what they are. That this self becomes so central and that we cling to it so tightly that it blinds us from anybody else or any other circumstance. So the Eightfold Path is the path of the end of suffering and the liberation of mind. The liberation of heart and mind, actually, from the bonds of I, me, myself. From the bonds of thinking all the time, or attaching to it. The Eightfold Path is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. It's a lot of rights. I don't like rights. Because when there's a right, there's a wrong. So I like to define or translate the word right as wholesome. Wholesome view, which means that it considers the whole, the system. Wholesome intention. What is your intention in your life? Consider it of the whole. So we can view the Eightfold Path this way. The first two factors of the Eightfold Path are put into a bucket called wisdom, right view and right intention. The next three factors, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, are put into the ethical conduct bucket. The last three, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, are put in the mindfulness or meditation bucket. So the end of suffering, to kind of summarize this, is living a life where we contemplate and we practice in these three bucket areas: wisdom, ethical conduct, and concentration or meditation. They inform one another. At once they look like a list that is linear, but they're not. If you practice one of them, you're really practicing all of them. And you will see if you look into them a little bit more. So what is wisdom? Wisdom is seeing things as they are. And how are they? There's impermanence. There's dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. And there's insubstantial quality to all phenomena. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and insubstantiality. The Buddha teaches that all conditioned things have no essential core to them. If you pick up a leaf, that's a form, but the form is what we say is empty of its own inherent nature. Because if you look deeply through a microscope and you start to introspect even more deeply, that thing we call a leaf falls apart. It doesn't hold up as a leaf. There are cells, there's chlorophyll, and then if we say cells and chlorophyll, if we continue to introspect, that falls apart. And this is the Buddhist teaching of insubstantiality. So wisdom is like getting intimate with those realities of nature, essentially. It's not something that you have to believe. Don't take my word for it, or even his. His teaching is contemplate it. See it for yourself. Experiment with it. And this is probably one of the foremost teachings of the Buddha that was a contribution and that actually defines Buddhism in and of itself, was this quality of insubstantial nature. Because ultimately the Buddha says that this I, me, myself, which we cherish so dearly, upon introspection, falls apart. Because what is that? What is this I, me, myself? If you look closely, you will see it is a collection, an aggregation of different things: experiences, preferences, aversions, desires. All of these things make an I am. It's the Buddhist teaching. So if we leave those alone and don't aggregate them, then what am I? Just the sound. Just the light. Just sitting on a tough old bench over there. Just sitting. Everything like this. When everything is like this, there's nothing to strive for. There's nothing to have to understand, really. Because we're keyed into consciousness itself, if this makes any sense. We come into an intimate relationship with consciousness rather than attaching to the history of this carnal body. So this is wisdom. I would never talk like this with a college student because it may send them running away from me, but find different language. Ethical conduct. When the Buddha was teaching his teaching, he didn't start with wisdom. He started with ethical conduct. Because if we can't treat ourselves and other people well, It's very difficult to concentrate and sit meditation when you've got that kind of heaviness on your heart. Even more so difficult to contemplate wisdom, impermanence, and unsubstantiality. It's just impossible. So what's required is complete stillness, as I've said before. Ethical conduct is really, really important. So in our tradition, lay practitioners will take 5 vows. Abstain from killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, and from taking intoxicants. So we practice in those areas. And they're not commandments, but they're guiding means. They're invitations. They're speed bumps, what I like to call them in the road. You know, they put speed bumps in the road so you don't go too fast. They're speed bumps for your karmic mind and your body energy. You got to slow down. You have to consider certain things in your life. This is that second bucket, ethical conduct. And the third bucket is concentration. It's coming back to the breath. It's not being drawn out into the cycle and the spin of the mind. It's being able to sit still, to be present, and to watch all things as they are. It takes effort, right? Effort. We've heard a lot about mindfulness in our culture, right? Mindfulness, being still and present, wonderful. And the Buddha takes it a little bit further than that, because mindfulness for the Buddha is an inspection of the body and its impermanence, of feelings and their impermanence, of the mental continuum and its impermanence, and of all phenomena and its impermanence. So do you see where this is going? He didn't play much Scrabble or poker. I mean, he was doing this kind of thing all the time, contemplating these realities. So in this way, all of a sudden, the things that we hold so dear kind of start to fall apart a little bit. And there are spaces in the mind where we can see things as they are. So the first noble truth is there is dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. So what is the opposite of dukkha? It's called sukha, which is contentment. So the end of suffering is integrating suffering. It's not cutting it out, because we can't. It's living with and getting intimate with it and know how to do it well. That's the end of it, rather than fighting. So that's the Buddha's teaching of the Four Noble Truths. That's called the Dharma. When the Buddha was alive, he didn't teach Buddhism. And Buddha, by the way, means awakened. That's what it means. In the later Mahayana Sutras, they teach that all of you are already Buddha, already awakened. Just cannot understand that yet or see it, right? It's covered over with clinging. So the Buddha taught the Dharma, the natural law of things. And it was through his experience. And he never said, you have to believe this. He would say, take this teaching and see for yourself. Try it. If it works, keep going. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. There are 3 important factors in practicing this tradition. There's what is called the triple gem. Triple gem is having a teacher like the Buddha. I'm sure that you all have some kind of teacher, whether it's somebody living now, or maybe it's a philosopher, or maybe it's someone else, or maybe it's a tree could be your teacher. Someone to help remind you of the practice. So the Buddha for our Buddhists is the teacher. The Dharma is the teaching. And the Sangha, which is really, really important, is you. Like, this is my Sangha tonight. This is our Sangha tonight. It's a community of practice. We're practicing together. And everybody is suffering in some way or the other. And you all know how, deep in your hearts, what's going on. And yet, you come and you sit we hang out together, and we practice Sangha life. It's really, really important. So this is called the triple gem. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha.
Thank you so much for coming this evening.
Okay, thank you.